Okay, good morning everybody and welcome. I think Neil has just given an excellent overview of the practical aspects of human factors. Some very good examples given there about how it can go wrong if we don't design for humans at the very outset. If we don't take people's capabilities and performance limitations into consideration when we're sort of actually building and making the equipment that they're going to be working with. And I'm going to sort of keep reinforcing the message that Neil has started to give, that it's all about creating the right environments to get people to perform at their very best. That's what human factors is all about. It's not about just about behavioural safety. It's not about just having trained people. It's much, much more than that. Les is quite correct. I've been working with the industry since the early 90s, actually, since just post-Piper. We were looking, I was working at Robert Gordon University in the early 90s, looking at how the offshore workforce perceived the hazards associated with working offshore, what drove their risk perceptions, what drove their risky behaviours and so on. And what we ended up finding out, of course, was that at that stage, and you ought to remember that was just post-Piper, they actually had a very good understanding of what could potentially go wrong, where they were most likely to get hurt, and so on. But what actually drove their behaviour was how they perceived management, supervisors' commitment to safety. And that was absolutely critical. And actually that's the direction my research took after that. What is it we can do to make managers more committed to safety, to demonstrate that commitment, to feed that commitment down through the line to frontline operators, to keep the environment as safe as possible. So I'm afraid my presentation is going to be a little bit more drier than Neil's. This is me. I'm now with the Energy Division Offshore of the HSE. I've been trying to push human factors, as I say, in a number of ways in the industry for many, many years, involved in the safety climate, risk perception research, looking at situation awareness and drilling crews, looking at safety leadership and OIMs and supervisors and so on. So I was actually quite pleased to get recruited to the HSE to try and make it happen, because you can produce all the research findings in the world and publish dozens of papers, but it was time to really land it in the industry. And I've been very encouraged since joining HSE about 15 months ago to see that finally the industry is running with human factors. It's very uplifting to see. I'd actually given up on you, to be honest. I'd gone to air traffic control in 2005 because I thought, hey, not getting anywhere. But, well, it's how wrong I was. Okay, I'm going to use a long, dry definition to sort of just reinforce it's about environmental, and that's not just your physical environment, it's also the organizational aspects, the systems, the leadership skills, the communications, and so on, and the job factors, the aspects of the task, the aspects of the equipment, and that all combines with individuals, their individuals' personalities, their skills, and whatever, which influences behavior in a way that can affect health and safety. And that definition comes from Reducing Error and Influencing Behavior, which was published by the HSE way back in 1999. So how many of you have seen that document? Oh, right. Not as many as I thought. Well, it's actually being revised at the moment. I don't know when the new document will come out, but it's a very, very good document. I use it a lot in my teaching. Actually, it's a very good reference point. It very clearly lays out many different aspects of human factors. So, what makes up human factors? Well, we keep saying it's more than behavioural safety, and it's more than just having training programs. If I'm reviewing safety cases and that's all that's in it, that the G holder says, well, we've got a behavioural safety program and we've got a training program, I'm not sure that'll be enough in the future. So there's a lot more to it. So it's about the individual, the person, sometimes referred to liveware in the academic literature, either people working alone, and they're pretty vulnerable when they're working alone. If you've got somebody who isn't quite up to speed working alone with inadequate supervision, invariably you'll be running into trouble. Or people working in teams. So the team mix has to be right. people with the right mix of skills, competence, experience, and so on to do the job well. We've got to, go into things like problem solving, mental capacity, and social skills, how people are interacting with one another. That sort of encompasses what the individual is required to bring to the situation. Then we've got the job and the technology, the hardware, the software, the actual task that people are doing, and also how the technology is designed around that task and the use. And I think Neil's examples are just excellent to sort of demonstrate how important it is to get that right. And then there's the human-machine interaction, again demonstrated by Neil's examples. And finally, there's the organisation, the whole context in which this happens. And as I say, that's where most of my research was focused. And actually, it's pretty tricky, that, because it's complex, it's complicated. It's about the culture. Well, what's the definition of culture? How do you manage culture? How do you measure culture? These were sort of questions I was tackling when I was an academic. And the systems and their effects on human performance. So you've got that conglomeration, complex interactions, a complex web. But we can make it simpler. In the whole of this, we've got to think about human beings, right? And I think the perception out there is that human beings are a hazard. They're a liability, right? They mess up your systems. They don't press the right buttons. They don't do things in the right orders. They violate your procedures. They break the rules. They take risks. So human beings are a liability. So why don't we just take them out of the system altogether, which is what happens in some places. How would you feel if you just had fully automated plants, fully automated installations out there with no people on it? Well, it's going that way in some areas of the industry. But do you think that would really, really work? I mean, as Neil said, you need the pilot to take off and land the plane. They might have 11 hours where they're not doing anything in between, but for 4 minutes you do need the human operator there. And there's another thing that humans bring to the situation, which automation perhaps and programming perhaps wouldn't manage to solve, is that human beings can be heroes. They can solve problems online. They can make minor adjustments. They can make compensations. They can recover from seemingly hopeless situation. I mean, you'll have all seen the ditching of Chesney Sullenberger's flight in the Hudson River. I mean, there was a situation that was recovered from spectacularly, because human beings are capable of doing that. And there's an earlier example, Flight 232, United Airlines, Flight 232, Captain Al Haynes landing the flight without any power whatsoever. He'd lost all his engines and his brakes and everything. There were fatalities in that incident, but he actually survived, and half the people on that flight survived. An extraordinary piece of flying. So people can do that, and that's maybe why you still need them in the system. But you need to create the sort of environment that will allow them to do that, to bring out that sort of performance in them. So as a regulator, as an industry, what are we trying to achieve? Well, we're trying to reduce the risks of human failure to as low as reasonably practicable. Now, to as low as we can possibly make it, given the situation, given the environment. And the other thing we want to do is facilitate the best human performance possible under the circumstances, because it works actually two ways. I mean, we're talking all about safety here today, and obviously the focus for the regulator is safety, particularly safety in relation to major accident hazards. The industry's done a lot to drive down the slips, the trips and falls, the occupational hazards. There's still a problem. Do not take your eye off the ball. Do not just dump all that and say, right, we're just going to focus on major accident hazards. But that is where the regulator is really going to be focusing attention now and in the future. And what I have to do is facilitate the best human performance possible under the circumstances. Make sure that people understand the hazards that they're working with, and they're equipped with the environment and the skills to deal, and the knowledge to deal with that environment. And in actual fact, if you're facilitating human performance, you're also facilitating across the board. You're just getting better performance, not just on safety, but on other aspects too. So we want to reduce the risks of human failure by understanding where humans can fail and how we can prevent that. And we also want to improve their performance, give them the best opportunity to give of their best. So what are the human factor strategic areas for the HSE? Actually, these are the strategic areas across the whole of the regulator. And I know we had 10 topics, which are available on the HSE website, but I think we can distill it down to five main ones. Avoiding catastrophe, and I've already talked about preventing the realization of the risks from major accident hazards. But you ought to understand what those hazards are and what you have to do to either remove or mitigate or control the risks from those hazards. We've got about building competence, and competence is more than just training. It's also about experience and making sure you have, as I say, the right people for the right job at the right time, the right mixture of skills, the right team. So building competence is another important aspect. And having, first of all, actually a competence management system in the first place. Because if you don't have that system, how are you going to build something around it? And the whole of the rest of the session, after the break, is going to be about the competence side of things. So obviously the industry is on beam about competence, because you've got a whole session here today looking at it. Then there's workforce involvement. Again, a powerful theme that is, we've got various work groups looking at workforce involvement. Absolutely critical, because ultimately the only people that can tell you where things are going wrong and where things are badly designed are the people that are actually out there doing the job and operating the equipment. So that lever is in the wrong place. That screen is not displaying the information I need to make the decisions I have to make, perhaps in an emergency situation. So, workforce involvement goes across from your operators at the front line right up to your senior management. Discussions, communications, shared understandings, everybody sharing in the feeling that actually things could go wrong at any time. You may have heard this term chronic unease bandied about, and I was speaking to a company yesterday who were mentioning this, and I know that Shell are very interested in this, so that people are always uneasy, always unsure of where the hazard is going to come from, and they're always seeking out information, weak signals, if you like, in the environment around them that can give them the cues that something will go wrong. And you need to involve your workforce. They need to understand what those signals are and how to pick up on them and what to do about it. Then we have leadership for safety, and as I say, this has been this was the sort of last area of research I was involved in before leaving the university. And I looked at leadership in air traffic control, actually, was the last industry. Very, very important. And I think that message has landed with the industry, and it is being tackled. Senior managers have to show the right skills. They have to communicate in the right way. They have to be willing to listen. They have to be willing to receive bad news. I think there's a resistance there sometimes to feed bad news up through the line. But if things are starting to go wrong, people, supervisors, middle managers, all the way up through the chain need to know about it, and they need to be accepting of that bad news, not pushing things under the carpet. So you need that two-way again communication, feeding bad news up the line. And the final thing there is learning lessons. There's no point in doing all this good stuff and maybe having high potential near misses unless you actually learn the lessons from those incidents. I know that you record, and your recording systems are a lot better than they used to be when I first started working with the industry. But if you think about the near misses that you have, they're actually free lessons. There's something can be taken away from a near miss because nothing happened, but something almost happened. So what was done that prevented that escalating into an incident or an accident? And dissemination of those lessons. I know you now are starting to have the systems in place, through the Step Change website, which is conveying the lessons learned from various incidents. But even near misses should perhaps be investigated to see what you could take away and what you could share with others, because we're all in this together. So Tom is going to talk about the toolkit shortly, but I'm just going to give you a flavour here. I mean, sort of maybe to reinforce why these 5 key focus areas in terms of strategy for the HSE. Because if we look at avoiding catastrophe, well, one of the things we want to do is manage human failure. We want to look at the tasks that people do. We want to look at the safety critical tasks that they do and understand, well, what are the opportunities for them getting it wrong? What are the opportunities for errors? What are the opportunities where the procedures are not entirely clear or are out of date, and they could actually do something that leads to loss of containment, for example. So carrying out systematic and careful analysis of the environment and the people working in it will be a critical part of what we're looking for in safety cases. And again, human factors in design. I mean, I know the plant out there is old, but there are new developments coming on stream. Get the human factors in there right at the start when you're designing your control rooms, when you're designing access to valves and so on. So get that in there right at the start. Understanding the risks, assessing the risk, making sure your workforce understand what it is they're dealing with. Investigate your incidents, even your near misses, and see what lessons you can learn and take away from them. I've already mentioned procedures. I mean, I'm not going to go through the whole set of bullet points there, but I think you're getting a flavour of what I'm trying to say. Make sure you have all that in to prevent major accident hazards being realised. If you look at building competence, again, the toolkit is dealing with training and competence, learning organisations, safety critical communications, knowing how to frame information, to convey it clearly and concisely. Maybe having checklists if you're going through a procedure with somebody to check off that you've actually done what is required at each step of the way. Workforce involvement. Again, involving the workforce in risk assessment and incident investigation. I know APITO have now set up a new training course for safety reps where they're being educated about the safety case, the content of the safety case, how to conduct risk assessment, how to conduct incident investigations. And so far, the feedback from these courses has been very positive. So they are available to the safety reps currently. So that's one aspect of workforce involvement. It's not just the safety reps you need to involve everybody. Again, the same aspects coming up there on workforce involvement. Again, leadership for safety. There's a leadership aspect in the toolkit. There's a supervision aspect. Staffing levels and workload. I mean, have you got the right staff in the right place? I know the industry is facing problems in recruiting at the current time. There are people retiring with a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. How are you going to capture that knowledge and experience and convey it to the next generation? Thinking about the workload that people are undertaking, thinking about the time of day in which they're carrying out that work, thinking about how tired they might be when they arrive on the installation after a 12-hour journey and then just getting them straight into work without any adequate rest. All these sorts of aspects. Organisational change as well. That's a really, really tricky one, the management of change. And the management change can occur at the higher level of the organisation, but they can also be minor changes. And recognising those changes at the front line when the system is starting to drift to a state where it might become critical. That's all about this concept of situation awareness, which I won't go into at the moment. But understanding how things are changing is very, very important, and maintaining awareness and anticipation and knowing what to do if the system changes to a point where you think, well, maybe it's time to shut down. Contractor interfaces, again, the toolkit will cover that. Again, learning lessons, all the same aspects which are covered in the toolkit are under that. So in terms, I mean, I've given you a sort of flavour of what our strategic areas are and how they link into the toolkit. But I mean, from a practical point of view, what are we as the HSE looking for? What are our priorities? So, I mean, one of the things we realise is that in actual fact, the industry may require better guidance for design notification, for example, how to develop the design notification, and also what's required in the safety cases. We will, continue to inspect key human factors issues, and of course, in the wake of Macondo, there's a lot of focus on wells competency, drilling competencies, and so on. And we're actually working on a framework or delivery guide to help with that. There are a number of new duty holders coming onto the UK continental shelf. So we will be trying to educate and give them information about what we'd be looking for in the design notifications, safety cases, and so on. Thorough reviews. And we'll also have a focus on leadership. We will continue to investigate events with high consequence potential, and in particular, we're looking at your hydrocarbon releases. And the industry again has been doing a lot of work to drive those down, but they are still a problem, and we will continue to keep a focus on that. And we will continue to support your workforce involvement initiatives through Step Change and WIG, the Workforce Involvement Group, which is running at the moment. In actual fact, thinking back, for me, those two aspects, leadership and workforce involvement, when I was doing all this research on safety culture and safety climate, we were trying to distill out what were the key elements, what was important, what would you need to measure, to have a good safety culture or climate. Those would be the two aspects. Time and time again, those are the two aspects. No matter what industry you go to, and there's a lot of industries have been investigating safety culture and climate. It's leadership, safety leadership, workforce involvement. Those are the two key critical areas that keep emerging again and again in the studies. So that's me finished. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll hand over now to Les and then to Tom. Thank you.